Is anybody expected not to be here? I see Mark, Jeffrey, Andy, Brian. That's not quite oh, and Rob. So we do have a quorum at least. That's a good start. I think I said Brian. Wouldn't want to leave you out, Brian. But who are we missing? Dale, Kathleen, Glenn. Is that it? Yeah.
I'm openly admitting to doing the COVID outfit with a dress shirt and sweatpants.
Oh, Rob, that's how you sit behind the dais too. We know that.
Can't tell they're not black pants even if I stand up. It's great.
We wouldn't have checked.
Yeah, it's
Nobody
awesome.
else do that.
Yeah.
We didn't really want to know.
You beat that ABC reporter who was just in his boxers.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
we don't need to go there.
Yeah. Like my son, it's his favorite thing to do. I'm like, put some clothes on. There's people that could come to the house.
Oh, what's worse than the ABC reporter who was wearing his boxers was I think the CNN legal analyst who was unknowingly doing very personal things that got caught on tape.
There's different ways of winning or losing.
Glenn has arrived. Says it on my screen. Glenn Bucci has arrived.
Better than Mr. Harold Kraft.
Well, it is 7 o'clock, according to my calculator, my clock, my computer.
This
So
conference will now be recorded.
if we could call the Mequon Municipal Water Utility Commission meeting of October 27th to order, and please call the roll.
Commissioner Strelchuk,
Here.
Commissioner Bushy.
Here.
Commissioner Meyer,
Here.
Commissioner Hansher,
Here.
Commissioner Garrell,
Here.
Commissioner Parrish,
Here.
Commissioner Schneider, not here, Commissioner Nervin,
Here.
Commissioner Worth.
Here. We have more than a quorum. I'm supposed to read at the beginning of each of these virtual meetings that please identify yourself before you begin to speak unless I state your name when I call on you. Please don't speak over each other. If you're participating or observing the meeting, please silence your phones or microphones except when speaking. And finally, while we always appreciate public comments at meetings, we have a sign-up system. I don't believe anyone has signed up to speak at this evening's meeting. But people who are observing, certainly we welcome and encourage your input at future meetings. Just please sign up. The first item of business on the Water Utility Commission meeting agenda is to approve the meeting minutes from June 9, 2020. Do we have a motion?
Move approval.
Second. We have a motion and lots of seconds. All in favor, any discussion, comments, corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
The next item on the agenda is the fiscal year 2021 water utility budget. Mr. Voigt, who's handling that?
Sure. 2021 has been, or 2020 has been an interesting year. So my report for the memo, it was a year where we didn't get a lot of meter replacements done because of COVID. So it didn't allow us to get into folks' homes. So we held off on that, but we had a very busy construction season. So that kept us very busy. And we also were out doing our standard maintenance out in the system, which was fantastic. For next year, it looks like we've got our meter replacement scheduled if COVID allows. And then we also have several water main extensions coming up. So we have phase 5 and phase 6 of the enclave. We also have an extension for the neighborhood hospital, so that will be happening on Port Washington Road. But our water supply contracts are going to be relatively stable. Milwaukee has chosen not to go in for a full rate case until next year, that being 2022. So that will keep our water rates relatively stable. And as you can see from the fiscal impact, our service charges will remain flat. Last year, at the very beginning of this year, rather 2020, we had a rate increase, and 2019 we had you're right, 2020 we had a rate increase, and then it's remaining stable this year. So our water rates are remaining relatively stable. In regards to water capital projects, we provided the exhibit for everyone to look through. Due to increased customers on the system, our capital self-funding, we've been able to increase over time. So that will continue to fund our capital projects moving forward. And are there other questions in regards to the budget?
That's what I was going to ask. Anybody have any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the budget?
So moved.
Second.
And second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Strochek,
Aye.
Commissioner Bushy,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hancher,
Aye.
Commissioner Garrell,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish,
Aye.
Commissioner Nervin,
Aye.
Commissioner Worth.
So we've passed that budget. The next item on the agenda is the 2021 water meter purchase. Mr. Voigt, I'm assuming that's you again?
Sure. So we are moving forward again with our water meter replacement this year. As I indicated earlier, we were held off due to inability to get into folks' homes, or just we didn't want to go into folks' homes due to COVID. So we're hoping that hopefully if there's a vaccine out and we can get into people's homes, we can then start replacing meters. The last year, 2019, we had a very aggressive year. We got 521 meters installed. We're hoping that in 2021, if we can purchase the meters that we have scheduled, we can continue on with the meter replacement program. Are there any questions?
Hearing none. Alderman Meyer.
So the funds were allocated last year for replacement of the meters. Are you looking to double that replacement then this year?
Correct. What we would hope to do is, obviously become a little more aggressive in 2021. We have the meters in inventory. The PSC has a, regulation where we're required to replace meters once every 20 years. So we're trying to catch up to, that figure of the meters, which we didn't get to them this year. Our excuse is COVID. We obviously did not want to get into folks' homes during this. They were nervous to have us in there. So next year, our hope would be to catch up and double up on the replacements.
So my only follow-up question would be, so we have the manpower to do that? And
Yes, last year with the same manpower, we had 521 meters installed, which was double a normal replacement program.
okay.
Correct. Blondine, I saw a hand.
That's what I was just going to reiterate. You may recall the very first year that we initiated the program, unfortunately, we had an issue with delivery of the meters. So the first year we actually installed was kind of a double year. And so with this year, unfortunately, we're more accustomed to a double year than we are to a standard year. So.
Any other questions? I have one. Where are we in the process of replacement?
If not for this year, we would be right on schedule. But, with this year, obviously, what we had done is averaged out over 5 years the number of meters that we would have to replace to stay on schedule. And interestingly, the way that the utility grew, it was kind of as we would add a subdivision and add a subdivision. So it kind of came in these chunks of, a couple hundred customers here, a couple hundred customers there throughout the years. So we're actually, if not for this year, we'd be right on schedule.
Thank you. Commissioner Nervin, I saw your hand go up right as I was talking.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just wondering how realistic is it to expect that we'll be able to get into people's homes next year? I'm guessing it's going to be towards the latter half of the year, but I could see this backing up unless we actually get on it. I know people are nervous to get us in their houses, but it's a concern, I guess.
Director Lundin?
This is really the request for the meter purchase. Obviously, we expect that city water will manage our actual inventory and not by the meters if it's not anticipated that they would otherwise be able to be used. Luckily, they have a pretty easy online scheduling system that they otherwise utilize, so they can manage the number of customers once it's safe to otherwise be able to perform the meter replacements.
Thank you. I saw Commissioner Myers' hand go up.
Yeah, one final question. So, since required to replace 5% per year, and of course that comes out to be that every 20 years it has to be replaced. So it's always a reoccurring thing. I mean, it's never going to be something that will be completed. We'll always be replacing 5% inside of it. Does it make more sense to purchase more of those now at a cost savings, or does that, or because of the technology that changes on it, it wouldn't make any sense to do that?
Mr. Voigt, Ms. Lundin, somebody?
Sure. Jim Boyd. To answer your question, Dale, it's an excellent question. Two answers to that. One is you are right in the fact that obviously, you don't want to buy too many due to technology changes, but the bigger issue is the battery that's on board. The radios, those batteries are, basically prorated for 20 years. They have an anticipated life of 20 years. So if you buy them too early, you would run into the battery running out early before the end of the 20-year installation date.
Okay.
Good answer. Any other questions? Does anybody have a motion of some sort?
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Strelchuk,
Aye.
Commissioner Bushy.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hancher,
Aye.
Commissioner Gill,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish.
Aye.
Commissioner Nervin.
Aye.
Commissioner Worth.
Aye. So that passes. And the final item, well, second from last item on the Water Utility Commission agenda is the Planning Commission recommendation for consideration of expansion of the Mequon Water Utility Designated User Service Area to serve the Uleo Creek neighborhood, which previously has been called the East Growth neighborhood or area. Is this Ms. Lundin or Director Lundin or Mr. Voigt?
Myself.
You may go.
All right, thank you. So originally the PC Policy Subcommittee and subsequently the Planning Commission has forwarded a recommendation to allow the Mequon water utility to expand outside of the sewer service area. While not all of you were a part of the original establishment of the utility, at the time, the designated user service area that was filed with the Public Service Commission was designated to be the sanitary sewer service area. That was a city of Mequon-led restriction. That wasn't one that was otherwise required by the PSC. And while there are strict rules based on both our referendum and our tariff that control the growth of the water utility, that is a restriction to be able to serve the Uleo Creek neighborhood. After evaluation, both the subcommittee and the Planning Commission have requested consideration of expansion to serve the Uleo Creek neighborhood. unfortunately, at this time, sanitary sewer service is too expensive to be able to support the proposed land uses. So they have not made a recommendation to expand the sewer service area, but are requesting consideration of allowing for the extension of water to serve the area. Unlike the expansion of the sewer service area, expanding the designated user service area for the Mequon water utility does not result in any direct costs to property owners. There are no capital charges that are assessed, and provided we continue to operate as a voluntary utility, there would be no requirement for compulsory connection or any ongoing capital charges until such time that the property were to connect to the public water. Well, that was the recommendation of the subcommittee and of the Planning Commission. Staff recommends that at this time, the Water Utility Commission actually consider whether it would want to expand the designated user service area to the corporate limits of the city. The process would otherwise be the same. We don't anticipate any resistance from the Public Service Commission, since it is relatively standard for a water utility to serve the area within the corporate boundary. And since we're going to be going through the process, we're recommending to expand to the corporate limits so that we could serve any area that the development demanded. We spoke earlier with the mayor, who wanted to ensure that we make sure that we're not requiring the connection outside of the limits currently outlined by our ordinances and referendum. So should the Water Utility Commission vote in favor of the expansion, we will verify with the other language that we would not be putting an undue burden on areas outside of the sewer service area to require connection, which is not otherwise the intent.
I'd like to clarify the last part a little bit. Nobody who's an existing building or what have you will ever, unless we changed all sorts of things, be required. But if we expand the potential area for water connection, my concern is that if there is a new development somewhere, that there's no request well, there can be a request, but no requirement by the water utility that a new subdivision or in the R1 district would somehow be required to hook up, because it may be totally impractical. Flip side is, if a new subdivision is close enough, or for whatever reason was willing to bear the cost of bringing water to that subdivision, I don't know why we would say no. And if we the Planning Commission, by the way, neither the Policy Subcommittee nor the Planning Commission considered this additional issue. So it's not that they didn't recommend it or recommended against it. It simply was an additional request that staff suggests that we consider. The Planning Commission and the Policy Subcommittee were only looking at the Uleo Creek area. But you know, it's a bunch of work to add areas to the water area, and by adding the rest of the city to the district, as long as there's no requirement but only an option, it doesn't seem like there's any downside to doing it. So that would be my clarification. Questions, comments? Alderman Garrell?
What's the difference between Pioneer Road? First off, what's the difference between Pioneer Road and the corporate limit?
Well, that's
the north.
Go ahead. So I shouldn't be answering.
To the north, there isn't any. The Pioneer Road is the corporate limits. This would just allow expansion further to the west and further to the east.
So
And
so my
and in some areas further to the south.
My concern with having I like to see the water run all the way to Pioneer Road, which is good. And that way, when people, you know, if you're going to start knocking those 5-acre lots down to 1.5 acres or whatever, then they can hook right up to the water. But I would like it, if they're going to be taking a 5-acre lot and turning it into you know, 4 lots, and then turning it into and not having them connect to the water. Whether you guys believe it or not, we do have a well water system, and there is a reason why we have that 5-acre limit. So I mean, if they're gonna if they're gonna be making these lots smaller in R1 from 5 acres down to something smaller, I think you should require them to hook up then to city water.
Well, that could be a condition of a rezoning approval if the city wanted to make that a condition. But I think if somebody decided to build let me give you an absurd example. If the Wells family, who has a rather large tract of land in the north central part of the city, decided that that they were all retiring and leaving Mequon and wanted to build a big conservation subdivision there, or an estate lot subdivision, which they're allowed to do, 1 house per 5 acres. If they wanted to add water, and they're willing to bear the cost, it's a nice option. If they don't want to add water, we shouldn't be requiring them to, because that's probably 2 miles to get there. So the cost would be astronomical. But I don't differ with you, Commissioner Garrell. That could be a planning commission requirement for a rezoning as a condition of the rezoning, I think. Commissioner, Director Lundin?
Yes, I just might add that obviously we've had even properties within the sewer service area that have developed, that have requested deferrals, either because of cost or other mechanisms. So while we would try to ensure that whatever rules were established for the connection, first of all, don't violate any of the existing rules established by the referendum or the tariff, there could always be either other triggers or other restrictions that would be considered for when properties have to connect.
Commissioner Stolchak.
Mirroring what Alderman Garrell said, I mean, I agree with that. Couple things. One, I'd like to see a requirement that they hook up to the utility unless they prove that the cost is an extensive burden. And then we'd set an established process for deferral, consideration for deferral that they could go through with parameters on it. I think that's reasonable. If we're gonna expand the utility area, I'd like to see people hooking up. I think the new subdivision should. If a subdivision does go in, I don't think that's an unreasonable request to at least have them go through the exercise that it's at least a known factor when considering building a subdivision versus, oh, hey, yeah, you've gotten the planning commission and we think we want you to hook up to water after the fact. People kind of wonder why, we're hooking some up to water and others not. I'd rather have it be a requirement with a known deferral process on that. In contrast to what Alderman Garrell said, is, the 5 acre zoning is something that he fought hard for his residents to maintain in a neighborhood, within his neighborhood. I think that if the mere hookup to water is not a driver to go away from the 5 acres, I think it should be sewer and water would be one of the items that we'd consider. That seemed to be kind of our benchmark standard. It wasn't just one or the other, it was both. So the extension of water, I don't know that we really want to open that can of worms and, have people build smaller lots where there's no sewer hookup. Because, it is a combination of sewer and water, and that is kind of how we've set that up all along.
Director Lundin.
If I may, obviously what's on the agenda tonight is just consideration of a request to the Public Service Commission for a modified designated user service area. Depending on the Water Utility Commission's will, if they otherwise voted to expand it to the corporate limits, we could at a future meeting come through and discuss the policy topics. For example, in the sanitary sewer, there are ability for exemptions both based upon distance from the nearest available main and some other parameters. So if the Water Utility Commission was interested in such parameters, we could bring together some options for a policy discussion as to what restrictions, if any, they would like to place. At this time, we're just trying to determine what the request to the Public Service Commission would be for the boundary limitations. Any other excuse me, any other restrictions that we want to place on the expansion therein, we could certainly consider.
Commissioner Meyer?
I do have some multiple concerns with this. My first question is that, you know, I don't know the area that well over there, but subdivision wise, are there any that are requesting to hook up right now?
In the Uleo Creek neighborhood?
Yes.
While there are no current developments under consideration, a large portion of the land area would be rezoned variation of residential. So this would be in anticipation of the requests for them as they move forward.
So with no potential at this time, developments going forward, with no residents in the area required to hook up if there's some along the road of that. So we go in and expand this out, and I know we're just going in for request right now, but we're going to expand this out to Pioneer Road. The water utility is really taking on a pretty big chunk of debt without any revenues coming in for that.
No, we're not recommending at this time actually extending the water service. All we're doing is.
That's what I just said. I said, we're just going in for the request to do that. You know, we're not doing it right now, but if we did that, the next step is that in Pioneer Road going out there, the water utility would be incurring a lot of debt without any revenues inside of it. If we move forward extending it.
It actually cannot. The water utility cannot, PSC regulations restrict it from building on prospects, so to speak. Every project must be a benefit to all users. So the utility could not extend water service with no customers.
So the reason is just so, how long does, once you get this extended, it's extended forever?
Unless there was a request to amend it again in the future.
Okay.
Commissioner Parrish. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Voigt, did you have something to add to that comment?
Yeah, I would just say, you know, what Kristen was indicating, we would wait for a sponsor. So in other words, we would wait for a subdivision to come approach us and indicate that they were interested in developing a subdivision and that they wanted to extend the water main for service. So that's how the utility would not get involved in debt. It would be a build and contribute by the developer.
So
Alderman Meyer, it's a follow-up on the same question.
and follow up on that. If so, if we had a request from a development to go in, would we require looping there? And what I mean is that, or is it just a direct line to it for?
We
development?
typically require them to meet well, the DNR requires them to meet minimum fire flow standards. We have at times more strictly specified that whether that's able to be achieved through a loop or whether there's a booster station required would really depend on the extent of the main and the size of it and how much use there is along the way or required demand there is along the way.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Parrish?
Thank you. So it is strictly a developer build and contribute model. So it's, like you said, the utility is not actually incurring the debt or raising fees at any juncture to extend the line. It's someone's picking a spot along this development route, and then they're going to pay for the connection. So I guess, you know, if anyone from the public is taking anything away from this, there's not going to be water all the way down to Pioneer tomorrow. It could take years and years for the sites to kind of slowly build out and then for the extension to occur. So I think that that's an important detail. I agree with what Alderman Strelchuk and Gurl were saying. There is this inherent problem where a subdivision that might be halfway down the corridor would try to make an argument that it's too expensive to pay for the water to come down. So I do think we should definitely require the hookup to the utility for any new developments. And perhaps there could be some sort of hardship, but we're creating this district. And I do want to say that the policy subcommittee, a big part of why we came to this recommendation was based on the potential land uses. If it was just going to strictly be 5-acre residential or some varying degree of 2.5 acre, I don't know that we would have recommended water coming down this corridor. So what we're recommending and approving tonight is kind of tied to that land use plan in my mind. And if you have any hesitation about it, I think that's a key component of it. My final question was just for, I actually do have a question, and that is that this area, as you know, is kind of laden with wetlands, creek, the Uleo Creek, and then lots of clays. And at the subcommittee, we talked about a technical study would be the next step after this meeting. So is that, I believe you would go ahead and do that after this, because it may not even be feasible in some areas, or did I misunderstand the technical study component of what needs to happen next?
As you know, I haven't attended all of the subcommittee meetings, so I was not aware of a technical requirement. We did, as a part of some of the initial inspection, do kind of the back of the napkin test to make sure that we thought it could otherwise be served. And at this point, we believe it could be.
Other
Okay,
questions?
that may have been more for that may have been for the sewer as well, not necessarily the water.
I do think
That's what
that
I
there
thought.
was some,
I'm sorry. That's what I thought it was for, Brian, but I'm
Okay.
not 100% positive. I thought that was more for, you know, on-site waste disposal systems. You know,
I
whether
agree.
you plow.
I agree. I do
You're
think
right,
there
thank
was
you.
some concern as to whether it could be supported either with private wells or with private on-site wastewater treatment systems without a negative impact. But for the either extension of the public water utility or the public sanitary sewer, again, aside from design and cost, I'm not aware of any other technical studies that would have to be performed.
And
One
because,
more question, if I may.
go ahead. Go ahead.
It's an unrelated question, Mayor. So
That's okay. You got
my
the floor.
okay. My question is the corporate boundary that was not, you know, contemplated by the subcommittee. Mostly just didn't occur to us. Does that add any estimated costs to this project over the estimated 1.3 once fully built out?
No, this would just allow the expansion of water in other areas of the city that are outside of the sewer service area.
And then we look to make that clear. And then it's only based on whatever parameters, whether it's Alderman Strelchuk and Girls, they want to add some requirements requiring, you know, east side land divisions to hook up to it, or what I was suggesting that people on the west, they shouldn't be required to as long as they're doing 5 acres or whatever policies. We can address all those policies at an upcoming meeting. What this is for tonight is simply to ask the PSC to draw a pencil around the city as opposed to around the sewer area, that based on our policies, we could expand water further. So it's simply, there's a bunch of work and cost in that, and going to the PSC and time, asking, you know, to get the Uleo Creek area added. There's no harm or requirement if we expand that border to cover the, instead of just the corridor along Port Washington Road, to cover the west side. That doesn't mean we have to ultimately require it, or we could require, well, we can't require existing homes to hook up. Under the existing tariffs and our ordinances, and the referendum that we had when we approved this. But we could or could not require other additional development too. But that's not the issue before us. Alderman Garrell.
Yeah, this might be just a bit off topic, but I just wanted to make the point now, since we're talking, about water and sewer. My neighborhood and throughout the city, where we've had the conventional septic systems, when you don't have the conventional septic systems in my neighborhood, every one of them has failed. Every single one of them has failed. Mine failed about 8 years ago, but all of the mound systems work perfectly. So mound systems out here do work. Conventional septic systems don't work. So somewhere along the line, when it comes to that point, if somebody's going to be doing having water and setting up their systems, you might want to just make some type of thing. You can have mound systems, because this solid clay underneath here does not work for conventional septic systems, but it does work for mound systems.
That was a discussion we had last night at planning a bit, and in fact, there are areas that don't work for mound also. And in fact, in some communities, and we're going to talk about that during the sewer district meeting. Some communities have, I guess that's not on the agenda, but have loosened up, like Cedarburg will allow holding tanks in some areas where the soil isn't appropriate for mounds either. But that's another policy issue that the Planning Commission has staff to look at going forward. I think I saw Alderman Myers' hand up.
No.
Oh, anybody else? Alderman Parrish. Commissioner.
So this
sorry.
corporate boundary thing, I'm okay either way. So we are saying that this district is going to be the entire city of Mequon? Is that what we're approving right now? Or recommending?
Correct.
Because I don't know if I don't. Okay,
Correct.
I don't know if I'm in favor of that. It was not discussed by the subcommittee. It creates all these other potential issues, simply relating to the character of the city on the far west end. I mean,
it's certainly not intended
to.
I mean, zoning and land use decisions are obviously completely outside of whether or not properties are served by water or not. And again, there's not necessarily an intent to have compulsory connection, although again, I've taken some notes here of some things that we could consider as the terms for service should we want to put restrictions on them.
I just don't know how it came to this. I mean, we were talking about the East Growth Corridor, and now we're talking about the entire city of Mequon being the district. Is that, am I misunderstanding or no?
Nope, the
Okay.
PC policy subcommittee was narrowed to the Eleo Creek, but as the manager of the utilities, I have the requirement to do the due diligence when making a recommendation. And in this case, because the process would be the same, and because I think the city has other parameters in place to control where and when things should be served, it's my recommendation that you at least consider extending to the corporate limits.
I'll listen some more.
Commissioner Nervin.
I think, put quite simply, it gives us the possibility to extend service anywhere in the city, but we definitely would not extend service everywhere in the city. It's just economically not feasible. And even if it was economically feasible, it's probably not advisable for those reasons you just stated. I think it just saves us from going back and back to the Public Service Commission time and time again as we add some boundary here, add some boundary there, and amass a greater and greater land area over time. We can essentially skip that step in the future and just add all the land now, and then we can just, through good policy, decide what to extend service to and not, without going back and begging for permission to add more area to service district.
And let me also add, for people who aren't on the policy subcommittee, this is not an attempt to change the 5-acre zoning, or there's no thought of it. In fact, the policy subcommittee is right now reviewing a conservation subdivision ordinance to reaffirm the 5-acre zoning on the west side of Mequon, not to reduce it. Any other questions? Is there some sort of motion? I'll move approval to expand the water utility district user service area to the corporate limits.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Alderman Strelchak.
I'd like to make a secondary motion that this comes back forward with policy discussion to this governing body and then maybe run it through planning commission as well first.
For what we're voting on tonight, or for policies that go then toward how we expand outside? The
Yes.
second, right? So we're not suggesting you're tabling this tonight.
No.
We still go ahead, okay. So we have a motion and a second to further discussion. I mean, we will come back with policy discussions.
Okay, so you don't need a motion and a second and a vote on that.
No.
You can, we'll just come back with it anyway.
There was that plan anyhow.
Great.
Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Steltech,
Aye.
Commissioner Bushy,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
No.
Commissioner Hancher,
Aye.
Commissioner Gill,
No.
Commissioner Parrish,
Aye.
Commissioner Nervin,
Aye.
Commissioner Worth.
Aye. So that passes. Is there a motion to adjourn? Mark,
Move to adjourn.
is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned, but don't go anywhere. So I'd like to call the Sewer Utility District Commission meeting for October 27th to order. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Steltech,
Here.
Commissioner Bushy,
Here.
Commissioner Meyer,
Here.
Commissioner Hancher,
Here.
Commissioner Gill,
Here.
Mark, you sounded funny.
Here. Somebody's dog's barking.
Oh, I thought that was you. Sorry, go ahead with the roll.
Commissioner Parrish.
Here.
Commissioner Schneider, not here. Commissioner Nervin.
Here.
Commissioner Worth.
Here. Amazing how that didn't change. Do we have a motion to approve the meeting minutes for September 8th, 2020?
So moved.
There was a motion and a second there. Any discussion, corrections, comments? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Aye.
Folks, anybody opposed? The ayes have it. The next item is the overview of the East Trunk Relief Sewer Project. And is that Mr. Driscoll?
Yes, sir. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present on this project as a follow-up to Alderman or Commissioner Boucher's request. I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen. I have a limited number of slides, and I'm going to try to keep this brief and concise. So let me get to the presentation here. Okay, so going forward, this was a challenging but rewarding project to work on. I'm going to touch on the project summary, the benefits of the work, and lessons learned. And then there's 2 maps in total, so there's 5 slides in total. So this project overall was completed ahead of schedule and under budget. And the relief sewer was designed to reduce sanitary sewer overflows, also called SSOs. And it was also designed to add capacity for future growth. This is the project area shown on the following two slides. It shows the city of Mequon here, and it's excuse me, an important point of clarification to distinguish between the sanitary sewer service area and the city of Mequon, where the city of Mequon is 47 square miles. The sanitary sewer service area is 20 square miles. The East Trunk sewer area, or the East Trunk sanitary sewer collection system, is 11 square miles. So that's just a portion of it. And the Central and West Trunk are the other two systems. The relief sewer itself is the 2-mile long tunnel from County Line along the railroad corridor, crossing I-43 up Port Washington Road at the southern part of the community here. So that's important that when I talk about the East Trunk sewer, that we distinguish between the East Trunk collection system, which extends all the way up to Highland Road. Here's a more focused general extent of the project service area with an aerial. It does include the East Growth area, is what we were calling it at the time of the work. I understand now Uleo neighborhood is the focus there. So that does extend up to Highland Road, the current service area, over to Vilda Park, west along Riverland Road south, and then in the vicinity of Range Line Road to the west down to County Line to the south and Lake Michigan to the east. So that's the general area of the East Trunk sanitary collection system. And again, this work was really just on the relief sewer, following the 2016 preliminary report for the hydraulic modeling to reduce the profiles and surcharging that had occurred following wet weather. So this project was constructed with a tunneling method. This reduced the open cut that was required. So it minimized the impacts to the residents and the traveling public, along with minimizing impacts to businesses as much as possible, so they could maintain access at their driveways. This tunneling method also avoided impacts to trees in easements, and avoided impacts to the railroad and freeway and other surface features. As previously stated, the benefits to this project were to add capacity to the sanitary sewer system and to reduce overflows or SSOs. So finally, this third slide here about lessons learned. I've identified 4 major lessons learned that are shared here. And the first one is really using effective communication to limit surprises to the residents and the stakeholders. I would say there's 3 steps, where the first was making the stakeholders aware by notifying and introducing the project. So the intent of these lessons learned were, and the request of it was that these could be used for future applications for different projects. So the notification with outreach letters and inviting stakeholders to public information meetings, allowing an opportunity for them to talk to someone face to face and ask some questions, really allowed to begin some dialogue between staff and various stakeholders throughout the project. So that was really important as part of the communication plan that was established with Director of Public Works Lundin. The second aspect of this communication is reminding the stakeholders of the project schedule. There's questions about when is it going to start, what's currently happening in the project while it's under construction. So having a website that with a link to updates was really helpful. So that communication outreach with written letters, public information meetings, phone calls, follow-up email, correspondence, meetings with homeowners associations at City Hall, meetings at the homeowners associations, pavilions or locations that they preferred. Those were all things that foster dialogue in addition to meeting with specific individuals and business owners. That communication from the beginning was able to engage people early in the project communications with the residents and homeowners associations, and that helped lead into easement negotiations. And that was critical importance for the alignment of this project. Another aspect of communication was coordinating with regulatory authorities, such as the Wisconsin Departments of Natural Resources and Transportation, Ozaukee County, the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District, other involvement was with utility coordination for electric, gas, and phone, to coordinate if there was any planned work that was going on that we needed to accommodate for. So those were all very important things to introduce ideas and then to get into the details further on. So trying to keep it moving here. During the construction, holding routine meetings with the contractor and the construction administration and inspectors was really important. Having safety updates. We had the Mequon Fire Department and the North Shore Fire and Rescue available in the event there was a rescue required from the tunnel operations that were 30 to 40 feet below ground. So it's coordinating that safety is important. The traffic sequencing for example, when I-43 got shut down, traffic got diverted onto Port Washington Road. There were 2 lanes open, one in each direction. Having a traffic control plan that's safe for the workers, safe for the traveling public, that was critical to have safety throughout the project. Coordinating with Public Works and community development along the 2-mile project corridor was critical as well. So the 4th lesson is to say that, once the work is done, we can't really sit back and say, what a relief, it's complete. We can't take for granted that the work is all over. The project was completed ahead of schedule, and the relief sewer was brought online and made active in advance of the spring wet weather. And that was great. That's exactly what we intended. And we didn't have any non-compliant sanitary sewer overflows in the area south of Mequon Road. However, SSOs did continue in other areas of the East Trunk sanitary collection system north of Mequon Road in 3 different lift station areas this spring. That was actually one of the largest, that was the largest recorded SSO that we have. So there is work anticipated to correct these non-compliant events, and that's addressed in additional agenda items tonight. So with that, I would turn it back over for any questions, if there are any.
Before we get to questions, I'd just like to point out that the project was done incredibly well, and as we've heard and we'll hear again, it was under budget and in advance of schedule. And Mr. Driscoll deserves an awful lot of credit and thank you. But anybody have any questions for Kevin? If not, I'm assuming then we're ready to, Commissioner Boucher. Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
Actually, not so much a question, but I do appreciate the follow-up with the analysis, the overall project, done as efficiently as it has. I like the lessons learned slide and the underlying analysis. The only question is also if you're incorporating in any other future large-scale project, as you said, communications with a number of different groups out there, but the communications with residents to ensure, kind of following up on the impact that happens as the construction is going on, to ensure that there's no negative repercussions.
There's flow monitoring that we've installed as part of the project. So we're going to be monitoring how the collection system adapts, you could use that term, with the relief sewer now installed. The city staff has responded to residents when they've had backwater complaints. We'll go out and we'll check the mains to see that our mains are working okay, and follow up to address if there's any requirement for the individual property owner to hire a plumber to check the line on their private property. Does that address your question, Commissioner Boucher, about the resident input?
Kind of. That is definitely helpful, but I'm talking about like going in the future, that monitoring if something's been done on a residential property, to be kind of ahead of the game in communications on any potential impacts.
The way I would anticipate approaching that is, moving as we move through the budget, the annual budget here that outlines the capital improvement projects, similar to the East Trunk relief sewer project. There were a series of meetings and resolutions. I believe it was over 7 resolutions that were authorized by the Sewer Utility District Commission from
I think maybe talking about there were a few homeowners who had some problems at their homes, but I do think that staff was addressing those concerns as they came up early. It's more a function of the process of determining whether the project itself caused the issue doesn't go as quickly as, unfortunately, as we might hope. But I think that's where he was going, Kevin.
Yes, and
in a very,
I'll just say,
very polite way, but.
And I'll just add, understood. Again, I don't think we can underscore enough the value of communication, and that's not just ahead of the project, but throughout as well. So yes, we will continue to be sure that that communication does not cease when the project begins.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Great job again.
If not, I think the next item is consideration of the staff recommendation on what to do with the excess bond proceeds. Is that Mr. Driscoll or Ms. Lundeen?
That would be me again.
Thank you. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay, thank you again for the next agenda item, the consideration of the bond proceeds. Commissioners, I'm interested in your questions, and I'll try to make this brief and concise with what to do with the question that's in front of us here of what to do with the bond proceeds. There's 2 options that are considered: offsetting the sanitary tax levy or reallocating to future capital projects. For option one, offsetting the sanitary tax levy, the benefit is a temporary rate reduction in the sanitary tax in the near term, in the near future. However, a deficit would be projected, or a deficit is projected in the event the bond proceeds were not allocated. That could lead to a rate fluctuation. And over the long term, rates would be anticipated to have to make up for that deficit. So this is not recommended. Option two is to reallocate future capital reallocate the bond proceeds to future capital projects. The challenges of this option are that there is a deficit that's projected based on the capital a 5-year program that includes lift station E replacement in 2023. But there is greater rate stability with this option. And with respect to the future projects, we could this option would allow minimizing how many projects would have to be deferred unless there was an additional funding source. However, budgets change in the future, and this is just 1 year at a time. So the other benefit of option two is it would continue the ability to address the sanitary sewer overflow non-compliance. And again, this is staff's recommendation to the Sewer Utility District Commission because it provides rate stability and project funding to address regulatory requirements.
Thank you. Questions? Alderman Meyer. Commissioner Meyer. And unmute.
Sorry about that. So in option two, is that, how are you basing the future years for revenue on that? When you're having the deficit on that, how do you address it? Wouldn't there be rate increases for that along the way to cover that?
Caitlin, could you address the question about the revenues in the future and the stability of the mill rates?
Yes, this is Finance Director Krieger. Currently, we have the capital funding projected with really no rate increases in the future there. The table that Kevin's showing here on the screen, the budget available for 2020, January 1st, that included the bond proceeds. So that's just showing what would happen if we kept rates stable to no increase, to the best of our knowledge of what we can anticipate happening in the next few years. So really, these are all the best estimates we can have at this moment. This is a table that can fluctuate every year. As you can recall, we reduced the tax rate for 2020 from 2019 because of the green infrastructure projects through MMSD, that capital tax went down. So what we're doing here is just projecting what we believe will be the capital funding in the future. But if the commission would be interested in doing additional projects or making sure that deficit is not there, a rate increase would be needed in the future.
So just to follow up, so everything from 2020 to 2025 is showing here is without any rate increase at all.
That is the best of my ability to do exactly that, yes.
Other questions? Alderman Parrish.
Thank you. That was a good analysis. Thanks, Director Driscoll. I'm in favor of option two as far as kind of recapitalizing it into our program. I felt like you were eliciting feedback in a couple of areas in your write-up. If we were going to have to spend approximately $5 million on lift station E, which is in the area of Ranch Road, obviously there's significant drainage and flooding issues over there. One of your ideas discuss purchasing easements and land. And I'm definitely curious about that and just wanted to ask that you, assuming that we probably do the second option and we do need to address lift station E, that we could look into what options are available for land. So we can not only do lift station E, but perhaps some of the bigger picture drainage issues in that area. If we are acquiring easement rights, just to be efficient with that. So hopefully my question was clear.
Thank you for your comments and questions. The lift station E project is based on the condition assessment that was also approved for the 2020 budget and awarded this spring. That condition assessment was completed recently with this recommendation for replacement, and we would anticipate a planning, design, a sequence of a planning study that would address the easements and the location of the lift station site prior to going into design. This would be in coordination with the commission, contingent upon the 2021 budget approval.
Director Lundin.
Understood, Alderman Parrish. Property acquisition to mitigate both flooding and inflow and infiltration into the system will be considered and recommended as a part of upcoming capital projects.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Other questions? Commissioner Nervin.
Yeah, I'm going to be in favor of option 2. We don't want to get behind maintaining our sewer system because bad things happen when you do that. But just looking at that respective bill for lift station E, do we have a handle on how many other lift stations are in similar deteriorated state? Those seem to be a pretty expensive endeavor, and I know we have a number of them. I just don't know if we have a handle on, beyond this 5-year window look ahead, how many else are out there in the relatively near term.
Alderman Nervin, thank you for your question about the lift station condition and other lift stations that have potential concerns for replacement or costs. The staff's implemented a condition assessment on nearly all the lift stations. Lift station E is the largest lift station in the city of Mequon. That's why the cost is so significant. The second largest lift station located along Mequon Road near Parkview Drive by the river that's called lift station A. That's the second largest, and that was replaced within the last 10 years. So we're not looking at that would be the second largest lift station project. And with that, I would turn it over to
Alderman Nervin, we have been going through programmatically and doing other lift station condition assessments so that we can be on top of it and anticipate and build in any other capital projects that we may need. Luckily, as Deputy Director Driscoll was indicating, not all always need replacements. Sometimes it's just either pumps or other work, but yes, we will be sure that we are keeping that in mind so that we can spread the funding out as level as we can.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to use option 2.
I'll
There's a
second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Strelchek,
Aye.
Commissioner Bushy,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hancher,
Aye.
Commissioner Gill,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish.
Aye.
Commissioner Nervish,
Aye.
Commissioner Worth.
Aye. And the ayes have it. The final substantive item on our agenda is to approve the 2021 sanitary sewer budget and establishing the 2021 sanitary sewer user fee schedule. Is this Mr. Driscoll again? You're muted.
Sorry about
But keep
that.
it short. No problem, but keep it brief.
Okay, yeah. I'm trying to figure out how I can unshare my screen. I don't think I need to share my screen anymore. But I'll just go from here.
Don't worry about it. We're almost done. We're almost the home stretch.
Yes, so thank you, Commissioner Worth. The 2021 sanitary sewer budget follows the work that's been done in previous years to address regulatory compliance. And we're looking to continue with planning studies for the central trunk and east trunk collection system following an award for the west trunk analysis. Condition assessments of lift stations are planned to be continued, along with pump replacements, flow meter installations, controls for our lift stations are with a SCADA study. The third phase of the Mequon Thiensville Interceptor in advance of the State Highway 57 Cedarburg Road reconstruction 22 is planned. As previously discussed, the lift station E planning study for replacement is anticipated, along with continuing the program for sewer lateral work, also known as private property inflow and infiltration reduction. So those are the various items, along with our operations for cleaning the 180 miles of sewers and nearly 400 manhole structures with our sewer maintenance crew here in Mequon.
Thank you. And I think, unless you didn't mention it, this proposed budget does not have a change in the tax rate. Any questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Stelchuk,
Aye.
Commissioner Bushy,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hancher,
Aye.
Commissioner Garrell,
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish,
Aye.
Commissioner Nervin,
Aye.
Commissioner Worth.
Aye, and it passes. Commissioner Garrell,
Oh, move to adjourn?
we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We can't have discussion on that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.